Hey everyone, it's Krista, and we're back again in my shop of horrors. So we're going to suspend the wires on this rod between these two jack stands, and then we're going to apply our glue, our epoxy, and just verifying sure enough, we showed up. Epoxy we're using is a two-part that we're going to mix with a dispenser and mixing tip. It's available most places. The Jungle website is not really the best for that. You're gonna want to get it from like Granger or somebody else. It has spotty availability and a kind of high price when you go to the Jungle place. All right. So yesterday or 2 videos ago, we soldered the wires. That's those joints in there. And then yesterday, we shoved the rubbers through, and I applied epoxy between the two rubbers. And not epoxy, I applied forming gasket, like synthetic rubber, non-hardening, non-drying. And that's there because when we fill this with the epoxy, it would tend to leak through the wires, which is a little bit undesirable. We don't want to have this being rigid, but also we then have to come back a day later to help hold the connections apart. I used the dowels, wooden dowels, and cable tied them. And that way we keep the wires consistently clocked, and hopefully nothing will be shorted or touching. So I just hang them via the wires themselves. Do I want to go through here? Oh, no, see, yeah, just kind of like, I do whatever works to keep them sort of level. We have 1.25 tubes of epoxy. So we have the last of the previous runs epoxy still available. It's pretty great because you can put the cap back on and still use it. And so this just has 2 plungers that go in. And so this is actually a 2-to-1 mixture, which is standardized. This dispenser is not from anyone in particular. It is from MG Chemicals, which when I was researching potting solutions, I came across these folks, and then they also said their product was gasoline resistant. I'm not sure in what regard they mean that, but we'll take the cover off, put on our mixing tip, and you see it has little channels, and it goes back and forth and mixes them. And the only bad thing is that you waste all of this capacity, which is enough to do 1 or 2 of our wires. So I think I can get like 20 wires out of one of these tubes. So we're gonna hang all of these, and then we're going to glue them, because we use very technical terms here, like goo, creepy, gross. Those are all very well-defined engineering terms with standards. I'm sure there's ISO standards. After I fill them up, I make sure there are no bubbles. We have to fill very slowly to help ensure there are not bubbles. Then we let it sit overnight, and then tomorrow we'll start with pressure testing and then electrical conductivity testing. And I'll do a video for the testing as well. Oh yeah, so although there is a sealant already on the bottom of the wires, it is not very structural. So you still need to kind of be gentle with the wires and not yank on them or anything. We used either the 1184 or we used a PPG aircraft fuel sealant. However, we discovered the flexible sealants, although impervious to fuel, did not give enough support to the solder joints, and then the customers would experience a failure because this piece is under the fuel tank and will be curved to reach the connector. So it's subject to vibration and, I don't know, torsion or something, pulling, force. And careful. You don't want to go twisting on these too much. There we go. So yeah, we tried those and they just didn't work for customers, which is sad because then it wastes their time and spills gasoline. Gasoline sure is a tricky mistress. Few things make her happy, many things make her leak, and that's one tricky bish. BISH to be, that's another kind of engineering term for something you disagree with, probably. All my engineering terms are meant in pure sarcasm, so don't think I'm being serious there. For I have a good dose of cynicism and sarcasm built into my DNA. That whole life is easy thing, yeah, no, that's just sarcasm. Because if life was easy, it would be easy, and I would be on the beach getting drunk with pretty people nearby. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of spread these out a little. And then we'll probably bring you in real close. All I'm doing right this moment is trying to get the tubes a little bit level, or the sleeves, the aluminum sleeves. I want them kind of level so that I can fill them. And that one's just not gonna, I like them to fill evenly. I want to get as much fluid in each one as possible. When I'm doing the filling, or the dispensing, as it were, I have to go very slowly. You can mash on the dispenser and make it happen more quickly. However, you're going to make the bubbling worse. So we don't want bubbles. Bubbles lead to an opportunity for gasoline to get through the whole system. And we don't want any gasoline to be able to sneak through these. Okay, Now the next part, let's go ahead and bring you in a little bit. We'll loosen the clamp, bring you down. Okay, turn off the light. Yeah, that helps. So right now I'm going to inspect and verify that none of the wires are contacting each other. And we kind of don't want them to touch the shell. However, the white and black are grounded, so they could touch the shell. Here the red is. And so you can cheat a little bit with pliers. You can twist the wires within the whole setup. Oh, I need to. Hopefully that still seals after I jimmied with it. And I don't know why jimmying with something is a bad thing. I mean, what did Jimmy do? They're all still looking pretty good. And if at all possible, I want to make sure that epoxy is covering the insulation, the solder joint, and the insulation. All right, so we did our little check. Ooh, that was close. You just missed it. Okay, so focus, focus. Here's the epoxy. I'll just give it a little bit of a bump, make sure we're still fluid. We're probably still, oh yeah, there's still fluid. Good. We're good. We'll put on our mixing tip. I'm not sure why this has a notch. I just don't know which way the notch goes because there isn't a notch. Now you'll be able to see, maybe you'll be able to see the mixing action. It's traveling on. It's good if you can do it straight up to get the bubbles out. And I didn't think to get a rag. Okay. So what I tend to do is apply the epoxy against one of the wires, and that kind of gives it a wick to travel down. So it appears like it's pretty thick, but it will it will travel through gaps. So it definitely, even though those rubber connector seals seem like they're pretty tight, and they're tight enough that they could hold up um, the aluminum sleeve by friction alone. They still were loose enough that this epoxy would leak through. The epoxy is polite enough that it can be removed from most surfaces with scraping or something sharp. Anecdotally, this chemical does not seem to be particularly harsh. I mean, I haven't, licked it or anything, and I wouldn't, but it's not like ones where it talks about, any contaminated clothing need to be burned on site or severe harm to aquatic life. I mean, there's not the scarier kinds of warnings with this. So it's probably just normal bad. Being that I'm 51, I've probably exposed myself to more gasoline and dangerous chemicals when I was a kid than most people today in their whole lives. So it's fine. I think we're about done with this tube, sadly. My little silver line is pretty close to the housing. Yeah, I think it's kind of done. It's not giving me any more. Okay, so now we're going to change to the other tube. All right, so the notch goes towards me from the factory, but it's away from me on this one. And switching over is as simple as that. Push the lever, pull that back. Try not to spill. And then you see the two-part different size tubes. Good to go. So it might not be genuinely quick change, but that's pretty quick. Pop a bubble. Okay, you can sort of see, all right. Now we've got a little bubble right here from the dispenser change. So I just sort of break it on the wire as it came out, hopefully. Next bubble. How many bubbles we got? Well, that one's going to try to sneak through. Oh, we got it. Sweet. Maybe what I'll do is try to get you pointed real close to the tip for a couple. And the one we just finished has a bubble, and the first one has a bubble. So we're going to pop those right. Pop. All right. Well, crap. If I bring you to this side, okay, I can turn you around. All right, let's give this a shot and see if we can get you right up in its teeth. A little bit of a bubble on the far side of this one. And we'll give it a little more to fill it up. And I have to be extra quiet because it's delicate work. Not really. That's just human nature. That's how that works. Now we'll go goofy. Oops, sorry I beat you guys in the head. We'll go goofy handed to the other hand and give this. Geez, I'm just all kinds of screwing you up. There you go. I'm finally off of you. We're going to fill this one up. Now I can sort of see what you see. I'm looking in the computer monitor next to me. The one we just finished has a bubble. This one went a little bit quicker than normal. Maybe I should have gone slower. I don't know. Bubble. Okay. I'm going to pull down on these. Well, I've got pretty good coverage, I guess, of that solder joint. Not white one, you can see the solder, but I think it's okay. So far, we've had really good success using this process of sealing. I'm sure we've had a couple failures, but I haven't identified any trends. Like when we tried a couple of the other solutions before I searched the world over for this one, we pretty much knew each one of those would fail before this, and they did. Their mode of failure was they expanded in the exposure to the gasoline, and then they pulled the wires up with them. So imagine like a plug. I definitely want to pull this one a little. I'm trying to make a mess of it. Oh, I see a bubble, 2 wires back and 3 wires back. So they take a minute to form. So the step's pretty tedious, I'm not gonna lie. I don't think anything of me is touching the tripod. I don't know why you're still shaking. Your foundation is not touching this table or this cart. So the way I typically have is a tripod with a brass tube coming off it. And at the end of that tube, as an arm, you are clamping the end of that tube. The camera is a somewhat cheap HD webcam from that jungle site. A little bit of a bubble over here. Boop. So I've always believed in full transparency of things I create. Occasionally there are moments we might not give away the secrets of, how to steal something and make money. In this case, I'd love if somebody took over making the FWIRES so I wouldn't have to. There's definitely a market for this. Um, I think they've just kind of wounded my soul, and I just don't have the bandwidth to keep caring. Checking back through other ones for bubbles. Make sure they're not optical illusions. Okay, so we re-angle you a little bit. There we go. And maybe get you to quit bouncing. Sure, why not? So the motorcycles this fits are mid-2000 Ducatis with a round fuel pump flange. And so the original part, the potting or the epoxy, breaks down in roughly 5 years. It can be as little as 5. It can be more. The fuel system components are made by Bitron. They're World Fuel Integrator. They have factories in Poland, Italy, China. I tried to reach out to them hoping to get be an authorized replacement supplier for the newer kind of wiring pass-through than this exact product. And my goal was to use that newer solid type of plug, and these metal sleeves would adapt it to work in the legacy models with problems. Ooh, I overfilled that last one a little. I hope it stays happy. It looks like it will. So Bitron has never gotten back. We even went as far as having our UK distributor has a friend in Poland, and they tried reaching out to the Polish factory and were ignored. So the generation of plug after this is a solid piece of plastic, probably acetal or acetal, I don't know how you're going to say it, or POM. And those are starting to exhibit failures on their models. So this plug here went from, say, 2002 through 06, maybe 08 at most for some models. The next gen plug, the solid one, is in the oval flanged fuel pump flanges, like for the Sport Classic, the 1098, the Hyper Motard. And it's also used by Aprilia on some of their models. And that new type of plug is starting to exhibit failures in the field. So it'd be great if I had a replacement available for that new type of plug, because then we could adapt it to this application via these sleeves. There's another application prior to this of slightly different diameter, and those parts are no longer available from the factory, and those parts are failing. So then the new type of plastic plug could span 3 generations of Ducatis, ranging from 1990 through at least 2012, 2013 or so, whenever through the life of the 1098 model. The newest generations, the fuel flange is molded of plastic, probably acetal, and the connections are molded in with that plastic. The electrical connection is made directly to the fuel plate, and I do not really know or care what the technology is on the inside, but it seems to be Bitron has, they've developed their practice over time. I'm sure ethanol has played a part in the disaster saga of everything gasoline since it was invented. Looking back for bubbles. So if you know anyone at Bitron, it would be fantastical if we could get one of those 1098 type solid plugs. If we could be an importer, get a supply of those, because then we could keep, at least 20 years of Ducatis running happily using that one part. It's fairly insidious that such a simple thing can sideline a vehicle. We'll probably be doing for a minute, we'll probably do one or two customers' parts and showing in YouTube how to fix it yourself, but I'm not going to be doing that as a rule. Now lunch has arrived, but I can't stop yet because I need to use the material we started. So lunch is going to have to wait a little bit. We have this one and one more, and then we'll check for bubbles. I'm kind of like continuously checking for bubbles as I'm pouring. That's just my hand shaking. I'm not banging it intentionally. My arm's kind of tired. So tomorrow we have a pressure tester, which is an aluminum box I built with 3/8 walls, and it has a hole that matches where this part goes through, and then it has a toggle clamp, and an air fitting. We put a 10-pound regulator and a blow tip to act as the power feed. You'll see it all. It's pretty cool. And so we hit these with roughly 10 psi, which is 3 to 4 times what it'll ever see. And we dip the ends in a cup of water, and then we paint the exposed bit at the connector with a paintbrush to check for leaks. I then have a microcontroller programmed to check conductivity on the wires. So it checks that none of the wires touch another wire. It checks that each wire touches itself the way it's supposed to. And it makes sure that none of them are touching the shell. And so you'll see those two test setups tomorrow when I go live for that. And that's pretty much the last part of the WIRES series. For this kind of moment. All right, now let's double check for, we have a bubble here. Maybe we need something to stick that with. Okay, we got it. Bubble there. This one's not touching anything, but might as well get rid of it. Okay, so we're gonna put you sort of back where you belong. You can sort of see something. These bubbles are pretty minor. It's just you want to make sure you don't get a huge bubble along your solder joint, because that will help a leak happen. Add a little more. That one's good. Oops, drop the drop. That one's good. Little bubble here. Bubble there. More bubble there. Big old bubble here. Oh, he's got a couple. All right, I think that's got it. Another great thing about the E30 is that it's transparent and you can see the bubbles. All right, that's it. That's going off. This goes back on the same way. Or is that not right one? Maybe it's this one. Okay, hopefully. All right, so then that's good for next time. We have probably 3 left because we did 3-ish. We might even have 4 more, but that's that. Thank you for watching. That's the FWIRES bane of my existence. So, yeah. We'll see you for the next fun episode of trying to not break things. Thank you for watching.